request from our speaker that I not have a long introduction. And I was a little curious about it, and I looked at him and said, why? He said, because I have so much to say. Let me have the time. But I want you to know that our speaker this morning is the Reverend A.A. Dix Sr. And he always likes to make that distinction because he wants you to know that the fruit is A.A. Dix Jr. Somebody say amen. Amen. But for his entire life, he was prepared for one job and one job alone, one high position that everybody can hold him in high esteem. You probably already know from the booklet that he was born in Aiken, South Carolina, and he went to Aiken High School. And when he went there, it wasn't a notable place, but after he graduated and people saw his success, they began to look at the school a little differently. You know, isn't it interesting how one man's life can impact his community, can impact his family, can change things? And so this one position that he's been working on, he had to walk through many different things. He came here by way of Benedict College and was a student there. And even there, people knew that there was something special about him. It was the way he walked, the way he carried himself, the way he articulated. And, you know, it's one thing to matriculate, but when you can articulate and matriculate at the same time. But he was preparing for this sacred, special position. You know, you probably know him as the pastor of Friendship Baptist Church on House Street. And while many other churches are trying to grow big and huge and just many, many people, he wanted his church to grow deep. Not deep in concrete, but deep in their sentiment and their relationship with God. So Friendship is known as the house of God, a place where we are in the family of God. But that was just another stepping stone toward the preparation of this significant position that he now holds. And maybe some of you know him as the director of the A.A. Dix Funeral Home. And what a career walking towards that, starting here at Palmer Memorial Funeral Home and working in our city. And you begin to see from the formation of the jobs and the things that he's done, he's had a life of service. And many families having experienced the care and the compassion of the A.A. Dix Funeral Home really begin to see the character of this man. But all of these positions, all of these titles, and not to mention the one with the National Baptist Association and being the committee chairman for education, and boy, to be able to rise up in that group, I mean, you really got to be on your toes. But that was just another stepping stone to prepare him for the most significant accolade and position in his life. And I said, Reverend Dix, what would that be? He said, well, I'm a granddad. And I said, a granddad? He said, well, not only am I a granddad, but I have 10 grandchildren. Devin, Anthony III, Kennedy, Nakia, Katera, Kalia, Desiree, Jonathan Jr., Caden, and Joshua. And he has great hope for Joshua. It won't be the battle of Jericho, but Joshua may soon occupy Jericho. Won't you welcome with me my friend and pastor and director, Reverend A.A. Dix.
I've dreamed many dreams that never came true. I've seen them vanish at dawn. But I have realized enough of my dreams, thank God, to keep me dreaming on. Amen. I prayed many prayers when no answers came. I've waited patient and long, but I have found enough answers to my prayers to keep me praying on. Amen. I've had many friends who failed, left me to weep alone, but I have found enough of my friends' true blue to keep me trusting on. I have drained the cup of despair and pain. I've had days without song. But I've sipped enough nectar from the roses of life to make me want to live on. Good morning, my brothers and sisters in Christ. Whenever you see the fella that Bishop Redfern was referring to, please give that man my highest regard. I happen to know that when I do stand before God, and I'm grateful that my attorney is here. Usually when we're in the courtroom, the judge is up here, and she and I are out there. Thelma Jones Walker, attorney at law, great student of Jewish prudence. And I happen to know that today, I'm not the judge, though I'm up here. I'm probably up here to be judged. But I trust that you will judge me prayerfully as we seek to say a word about the local church impacting our nation through prayer. When I stand before that judge, I won't be bishop, elder, pastor, grandfather, husband, or otherwise. I would rather just be servant of God. Well done. You know, my mind is messed up this morning. I have to confess that it's not because I have not had breakfast. It's just that there are certain words that challenge my scruple. They scramble my brain when certain words come up, particularly in the same environment. Things like prayer and church. Does that not weary you to have to think about two very great words like prayer and church? Before I get started in my 4-hour speech, I would like to ask you to please hold on to two questions, if you will, for me. Just two questions. First of all, where are my keys? That's the first one I need you to hold on to and see if you can find an answer. Where are my keys? Where are my keys? Secondly, I want you to ponder the question, are you serious? I mean, really? Are you serious? You still didn't get that one. Let me try this out. Are you serious? Are you serious? Just those two questions. I was thinking about this matter of prayer and the local church, and like I say, I still haven't been able to get my arms around it, though I've been pastoring 35 years at the Friendship Church here in Columbia, been in ministry for over 46 years, and I'm still trying to get my arms, Sister Savage, around this matter of prayer and church. Trying to get my arms around it, Attorney Walker. Still having trouble embracing all of it. I thought about it, and I thought about it, and I thought about the fact that I'm a student of social institution. We come here to be institutionalized. We start out with the family. We move to the church, and we end up in the world. Prayer and the church. I remember that at the beginning, the Bible says in the beginning God, and by the end of the first book, it says that in a grave in Egypt. By the time we get to the end of the Old Testament, it says cursed. Wow. Wow. I will curse you with a curse. And then God gets silent. 400 years of silence. After speaking to us, you know, someone dies, we're thinking about, well, what were their last words? Well, The last words of God at the end of the Old Testament was the word curse. Didn't say another word for 400 years. Then I'd like to ask you to join me as he decides to open his mouth again. Matthew chapter 5 says that they were gathered on a mountain and he had them to sit down, and when they sat down, he opened his mouth and taught them, saying, blessed. I don't think you're hearing that just yet. But I want to ask you to let's look at this night school teacher of Nicodemus, whose name is Jesus. He's there in the 5th chapter of Matthew, addressing the church. And he says to them in Matthew chapter 5, verse 14, I believe it is, 13, he says, church, you are the salt, the preserving power of the world. I placed you here to preserve. Those of you who are old and are farmers, you remember that the pork was kept by bathing it in salt. Salt has a preserving power. You are the salt. Then he jumps to the next verse and says, you are the light of the world. I just haven't been able to get my mind around it, Brother Joe. The church is such a powerful organization that derives from an organism. Living, moving, breathing, feeling, caring, producing an organism. I just haven't been able to get my mind around it. I'm trying this morning. And then I hear this same Jesus speaking in Matthew 16, and I guess around verse number 18 or so, he says, I say unto you that thou art Peter, as a result of you knowing who I am. I want to tell you who you are, Peter. And upon this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it. Where are my keys? And I will give you the keys of the kingdom. Wake up, church. Wake up, my church, in a world where we're devastated by rules, regulations of government. God did not put the government in us. He put us in the government. I'm still trying to get my mind around it, but I need my keys. I need my keys. I need my keys. And the number one key of the kingdom is prayer. I need my keys. If I'm serious, I need my keys. If I'm going anywhere, if the world is to move and to change and to arrive where God has destined it to be, we must find our keys. Prayer. From the Greek word proseuche, which means front to front. Proseuche. Prayer. I know Tony Evans has defined prayer as that matter of giving God permission to interrupt our affairs. That's Tony Evans' definition of prayer. But prayer really is this matter of proseuche, coming face to face with God.
Amen.
To share with him our concerns and to hear what he has that he wants us to affect in life. If we are to be effective, we must first be affected by the face of God.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
When Moses went up on Mount Sinai, he could not look into the face of God. I wish I could get you as a church to understand what great power God has given you in this key called prayer. If we are going to face the enemy, and my brothers and sisters, I might as well share with you the 3 W's. I heard the brother pray on unity, but when I think of unity, I think of these 3 W's. We must walk together. We must work together. And we must engage in warfare together. How dare you show up for war without your weapons? How dare you show up for war with all your armor on, but yet no power in your prayer? The church might need to be careful to understand that God may well put her on trial and try her with regard to the effectiveness of her prayers as to whether they are fervent or not. How dare you live in a country like ours with the kinds of rules and regulations that we are faced with, and we dare not go to him face to face? Are you serious? Are you serious? Are you serious about impacting the world with the prayers of the local church? Have we sat at the feet of Jesus with an attentive ear long enough to understand what great power we hold when we hold the keys? Whether it is to a Lexus or Volkswagen or Mercedes or Maserati or Rolls Royce, they don't move without a key. And the key is much smaller than whatever it is that the key operates. God has endowed you with the power of prayer to go to him in whatever matter there is. You are to be so close to God, so personal with him, until whatever you and he come in agreement with, there will be change in the world. This Easter, I was helping the children to dye eggs, and I noticed that just one drop of the dye had changed the water. You know, there are 3 types of churches, you know. You can take boiling water, put an egg in it, and the egg becomes hard. Isn't that amazing? Some of us, when we're faced by the challenge that God has placed before us in our world today, it's boiling. Wouldn't you say that the temperature of the morality of our country right now is boiling? Yes. Some of us have become hardened and angry and bitter and complaining. Then we could take the same boiling water and put carrots in it. And they become soft and mushy. There's some of us in what we call the church, when we're in this boiling, brimming environment of ill repute, we become soft in our prayers. we begin to tell God that he has forsaken us. But I would submit to you, my brothers and sisters, that he has not forsaken us. It may be that we have forsaken him. Then we could very well take coffee and put in the same boiling water, and the coffee is not affected, but the water is. Are you serious? Maybe God has put us in this world not for the world to make us hard or soft, but for us to change the world.
Amen. Yes, sir.
I'm trying to get my arms around this thing, prayer and church. I was looking at this matter of church and prayer, and I remembered that there are three things we really need to do, and I trust you'll do it throughout today on this great World Day of Prayer. I wish that you would find your keys. Amen. Prayer and fasting. Keys. You know, some of the stuff that we need to impact and change won't be changed by just prayers. You do remember how upset Professor Jesus became when one man came to give the report card on Jesus' students. He said, my son is a lunatic. We got some lunatic stuff going on in our world. Crazy stuff. What? And I brought him to your students, to whom you gave the exorcist and the dunamis, the power to change things, the power to rebuke and expel and get rid of. But they were not able to do him any good. Jesus says, out of frustration, how long shall I tolerate America's unrevived church?
That's right.
How long shall I put up with you? How long shall I share my rich teachings with you? How long shall I allow you to dwell with me in high places and you not use the power of prostitute? You won't come to my face. You won't stand before me and get the information I'm requiring of you.
That's right.
How long will it take?
How long?
Bring him to me. And straightway he was healed. And these embarrassed students would wait till night in the corners of privacy and summons the night school instructor who instructed Nicodemus and would ask him, why could we not change America? Why could we not change the way our political environment is today? Why could we not do it? Why are children being aborted by the massive numbers that they are?
That's right.
Why is it that we're in the state that we're in? Why could we not do it? Jesus says to them, because you ain't serious. You have lost your keys. You're my demented church. I gave them to you. You laid them down. You refused to use them. That's why the road is so rough, because of your unbelief. But verily I say unto you, this kind of change does not take place except but by fasting, A-N-D, prayer. I'm sorry. Let me shut up, sit down. Can I tell you how important it is that you couple your prayers with fasting? Amen. And some of our churches are confused. Well, don't look at television or don't read a certain magazine. That will be considered fasting. Where did you get that line from? Is that where you got that from? Are you serious? You have allowed the enemy to rob you of one of your main keys. Fasting is about giving up food. Can I share something with you? It's just me and you. I'll leave it now. Do you know that the first, and the reason I know it's about giving up food, you know, certain change, certain impact in the world by the church ain't coming until the church learns how to fast. I'm talking about collective, in a spirit of unity, together. When everybody is praying, can you imagine bombarding the gates of heaven with fasting and prayer, and mountains start taking up wings and moving?
Yes, sir.
And things get easier for the church and for the world. Because when it's easier for the church, it's easier for the world.
Amen.
The first sin against God was done with food. They ate off the tree.
Yeah.
A tree.
Amen.
It involved a tree. And then they clothed themselves with the leaves of a tree.
Yes, sir.
They covered themselves.
Yes, sir.
I don't think, I'm trying to embrace this thing, man.
Yes, sir.
It's hard for me to get my arms around the full thrust and impact of this thing. Then I see this fella by the name of Jesus, who is baptized of John in the Jordan. And straightway, while others were gone home to celebrate their christening, their baptism, sitting down to a large feast, Jesus goes way to the wilderness, led of the Spirit to be tempted by the devil. And when he arrives there, his first test has to do with fasting. And Satan approaches him not in the vein of humanity, but says, if thou be the Son of God. And Jesus says, no, brother. Man sinned against God, and man must atone for God.
Yeah.
Y'all missing that.
Yes, sir.
I'm not approaching this matter with my divinity. I'm approaching it with my humanity. Since the first man ate from the tree, I'm denying food.
Yes, sir. Come on.
Yes, sir.
I'm going to give up food while others are feasting. I'm going to fast
Yes.
for 40 days so I can get my spiritual power, because I'm serious. Are you serious?
Amen.
They sinned the product of a tree, and we are now saved, and the world is saved because the product hung on the tree.
Amen.
You'll get it one day. 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 Your job and mine is to pray until things change. And once things change, we must not only pray, we must praise Him.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And as we praise Him, we must then proclaim His name.
Tell the story. Hallelujah.
Amen.
So often I prayed, did not get any answers. So my praying turned to complaining. And I had to go and tell God, God, I prayed, you didn't answer. I complained and you ignored me. So I found myself in the 34th Psalm. I will bless the Lord at all times, and His praise shall be continually in my mouth. God responds when we proclaim His word.
Yes, sir.
My brothers and my sisters, where are my keys? Are you serious?
Somebody pray for me, had me on their mind, took the time to pray for me. Oh, I'm so glad they prayed. Oh, I'm so glad they prayed. You know, I'm so glad they prayed for me.
Preacher, you know, I got to go to work as a preacher. Making it hard for me. Brothers and sisters, around this time, we usually acknowledge and recognize different ministries in the room. We talk about contributions and local activities. But this morning, I would ask you to bear with me as we make just a couple of small acknowledgments. It's been 20 years that we've walked on this CityLight journey, and there's been many ups and downs, but there have been a couple of people who have been special. And some of you have been asking about them. How are they? Where are they? The sad thing about founding something is that you're forever glued to it. George Washington was the first president and looked like every dollar that we have, his picture is on it. And some of you have been really interested and concerned about Joe and Gladys and how they are and what's going on with them. And some years ago, Gladys said to me, she said, Redfern, I won't be able to do this long. I'm getting old. And I thought that was the funniest thing in the world. What does getting old have to do with anything? Now I'm a little older and I can't show up at all these meetings, and I'm beginning to understand. But I wanted to take just a couple of minutes to acknowledge them, and I wanted you to know they are very upset and uncomfortable right at this moment, even at this discussion. The whole 20 years, Joe nor Gladys have never wanted any attention, never wanted any accolades, never wanted any gratitude or appreciation. They just didn't need that. They have some severe, intense desire to serve God. Gladys is the one that would go to Washington, D.C. and just go there to pray. And she went there and was gone a week, and I talked with her when she got back. I said, well, did you see the Washington Monument? And she looked at me so strange. Well, did you go by the White House? She said, Redfern, I went there to pray. I said, okay, I'm a praying man, and I went to D.C. when some alphabetical list of what one should do. He said, well, Redfern, I probably can't give you but one letter. And I said, well, what is that, Joe? He said, the letter A. I said, A for excellent, being number one first. He said, no, just be absent. If you can have the thing happen and you not be there, then you've been a leader. I said, whoa. And I said, well, Joe, that's a great thing. And I said, when we are getting CityLight, we want to get people involved, and we want to get them organized, and we want to have a conference to get a mission statement. He said, I'll be absent. I said, well, Joe, we need to set up some committees. He said, I'll be absent. He said, do you know how many conferences I've been where there was a need for a mission statement, a vision statement, and we met for weeks, and we came up with the same idea we had when we went in, and nobody agreed to anybody else's. He said, I'm not going to another vision mission conference. I'm going to be absent. They said, well, Joe, what about these committees? He said, Redfern, I'm trying to move fast. I don't need an anvil tied to my leg. Just simple things. But we would have these prayer breakfasts, and I was trying to inform Joe that he was the leader, and he would never wear the leader's clothes. He would always come with a shirt with open collar. And I would say, Joe, we're looking for the leader. He's out there getting dishes, serving people. I said, man, what kind of leader do we have? And over the years, I've just watched him. And after all of everything is said and done, he would quietly take out his billfold. He didn't have an ostrich leather wallet like I have. But he would pull out this tattered, rough old billfold, and he said, I wonder how much was it? And he would write a check quietly after everyone was gone. And generally, he paid for everything. And I've just watched this over the years. And then we began to see that everybody started coming because they heard that Joe was a generous man. They never came for the real meeting. They would come just so that they could tell them about their ministry and why they should be able to put their hands into Joe's and Gladys' pocket and purse and pull out whatever they want. And sometimes they got what they wanted, and sometimes they didn't. Sometimes they stayed, and sometimes they left. But the thing I noticed about them is that they stayed true to the original call, true to the original vision. And I just wanted to remind you of some of that. Some years ago, Joe thought that it might be possible to bring Tony Evans here in the midst of the Confederate flag. He's a Georgia boy. There's a restaurant called Cracker Barrel, and we always refer to that restaurant. We talk about white people from Georgia. He's just a good old Georgia boy. And he grew up in the South, and many of you had expectations for what kind of person he would be racially. But boy, he is a lover of men and women, boys and girls. He has a heart so big. He overcame his cultural biases, his cultural upbringing, and he stood man to man with whoever. And he was able to extend the right hand of fellowship, not just in a church, but in his life. And he has walked that all his entire career. He's been able to build up businesses all over this country, not because of his mental acumen, but because of his heart and his willingness to pitch in and work. He told us some years ago that it's not how smart you are, it's not how much you have, but he said diligent effort, consistently applied in a specified direction over a long period of time will yield results certain. And so when he came into the idea of racial reconciliation and came into the idea that we are all brothers and sisters in Christ and that the Confederate flag and our history should not separate us, but should be a means of us communicating. And he said, well, let's bring Tony Evans. Let's get the Williams-Brice Stadium. And some of us had never even been in it. And well, oh yes, let's get the stadium. And then on that day when we walked in and looked at 80,000 empty seats, and then we began to proselytize how much it would cost. I mean, it just blew our minds. And we were standing in doubt and not certain. And he said, well, let's go to the Coliseum first. And he took us to the Coliseum. No, we went out to Trenton Road Baptist Church. And we filled that. And then he took us to the Coliseum. And he built us up. But he was never in the foreground, always in the background. And he just raised something up in all of us that just made us feel that we could. And many of us on many occasions and went to him and said, well, Joe, how do you do this? He said, well, I pray. I pray. He said, man, you know, I pray. I ask God, what shall I do? And then the day we saw 80,000 people come to the Williams-Brice Stadium, all of us, our chest got just a little bigger. Our imagination grew. And all the ministries that were around like little ducklings and sucklings, all of them stood and felt big. It wasn't the big churches. It wasn't the big ministries. It wasn't the important people. It was just little simple people that he was able to communicate with. And some of us were struggling in our marriages. We didn't know how to communicate with our spouse. And Joe had a wife that was irrepressible, unstoppable, one who had a commitment to God that was unbreakable. And they together, she supported him in everything. I remember the first CityLight meeting I came to, and Joe wasn't there, and we was having a great meeting, and we was going on, and Gladys was conducting, and the phone rang. She said, oh, it's Joe. Joe? What? Joe? Okay. She said, meeting adjourned, and just walked out. Gave me a shot at taking over. But I mean, their love for one another has been a remarkable demonstration of commitment, godliness. It's just an example of how men and women should be. I mean, it helped my marriage. I've seen people come and say, mentor us, show us. And it's just diligent effort, consistently applied in a specified effort, a tremendous commitment to one another. And on that marriage, on that relationship, was CityLight built. On that relationship. Now, I thought Joe was a praying man until I just had an idea that Gladys was praying for Joe. Wow. And then we formed the CityLight, and Katrina happened. And because of their prayers and their commitment, they said, well, that's in Mississippi. Can't we send something? Can't we do something? I don't know whether you remember, but every week CityLight sent people down, African Americans who have never been involved in disaster relief. We went in Biloxi, Mississippi. we stripped out the insulation, sheetrock, the wiring of 458 houses. We completely reconstructed and built 4 back to pristine condition. I don't know whether you know this or not, but in that Court of Shame, before it became popular, Joe and Gladys were standing there with Jimmy Jones and saying, maybe there's something we can do. And they went down in Aiken and went to the school, and Joe was out there with a lawnmower cutting the grass that had gotten 6 feet tall. They removed the junk cars and said, if the children are going to have a chance, they're going to have to be in a clean environment. And they called all the community in to pray. You know, it's just hard to remember. When Christ Central was just a whisper of an image in the imagination of Jimmy Jones, when no one else really thought much of him or what he was doing, he and Joe and Gladys sat down, and Joe said, well, sounds like a good plan to me. And they began to believe and pour into him. And never instructed him, never contained him, restrained him, just said, you're free. And do you know, never wanted anything back, never wanted to exercise control, and never wanted to be on the board, the committee, or the commission. He was absent. And when we look at how Christ Central is going, because of the prayer. When Joe and Gladys were talking about Dr. Manley and Christ Cross Style, and Jimmy was setting up the school in Aiken, and the idea that it could be an institute or college, and man, they were there. They were there. When it was talking about Saluda County and little girls not really knowing how to grow up and how to relate, and all these pregnant teenagers, is there something we can do? And Gladys went over and became Mama Gladys. When Dr. Manley was looking out over the world and had all these countries and all these Bible training schools, and said, Redfern, maybe you ought to go up there to Lebanon and help him. My wife said, maybe. but had the foresight to say, let's get together and work together. Never had to be in the front of the meeting, never had to talk about it, never talked about expenses. But right now, there are 14 Bible college, training colleges going up. There are 28 colleges going up in the 14 countries in East Africa. One right now is almost complete. The second one has started. It's an $8 million project. And 6 years ago, it was impossible. Now, there are 5 centers in India and Chennai, across southern India, where there are Bible training schools. Now, in Cameroon, there's orphanages and there's elementary schools. In Soroti, we built schools. In Masaruka, a young lady who just had a desire to go into a Muslim area and set up a preschool and elementary school, set up the CityLight preschool, elementary school, no money, no nothing. And she went in, those Muslims treated her so terribly, beat her down. They tore up her school, and she got a little seed. And Gladys talked with her on the phone and just said some encouraging things. Today, we purchased land, and there's a school there in Masaruka. And said, what kind of school that has a tarp over it and some sticks holding it up? And they just received some funding to build a brick building. But they just, behind the scenes, have been working. And somebody asked, well, are they coming to the breakfast? I said, well, I don't know. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. But they don't have to, because the work is going on. I don't know whether you know this, in Africa, it's 45% Muslim, 40% Christian. And someone said, well, why are you concerned? Well, because the Christian wants to win people by love. The Muslim wants to win them by fear. The Christian wants to feed you. The Muslim wants to cut your head off. There's something going on in the world right now where we are an instrument. We're at warfare. And Joe and Gladys, from their home, from their own prayer room, through CityLight, through Cross Style, through Ecumenical, have said, we want to touch the hearts of men and women all over the world. And our biggest building, 40 by 100, all brick, beautiful windows. And I said, Joe, we're going to put your name up here, the Grimaud Center. He said, Redfern, don't insult me. Don't insult me. He said, we want to lift up the name Jesus. Jesus. He said, have you ever been on a university campus? I said, of course I have. He said, did you see all those buildings? Of course I've seen them. He said, every one of those buildings has somebody's name on it. And no one knows who those people are. But when you lift up the name Jesus, everybody will know, and every knee will bow. And so this morning, we just wanted to take a minute to say thank you. Joe hasn't been feeling well, and some people at a couple of hospitals have been trying to convince him that he may be sick. They've been trying to convince him. They were trying to convince him so much that they were trying to tie him down or keep him in the hospital while I was up there helping them plan an escape. And Gladys told us that wouldn't be very good. But he presses on. And he said, Redfern, how is the ministry? What do we need to do? And I said, because of all of you. He said, are there 500 at the CityLight meeting? I said, no, sir. He said, good. He said, there 200? Good. He said, is it a handful? He said, you got about the number Jesus had. And he just smiles. And he sits by the television at night in his easy chair. And he thinks about the things that he's done. Now, he has precision tools all across this country, has a new venture called Cost Less. He thinks about all the ministries that he's given to. But the thing that he's blessed with, he thinks about his 3 sons. And I said, well, Joe, what do you think about him? I mean, David is successful. He has all these businesses. Greg has all these precision tools. Keith has just taken over the store. He said, I'm happy that they have good wives. I started praying for their wives as soon as they were born. I started praying that God would put them with the right woman. I said, well, Joe, are you just glad to have them? He said, no, they got good children. I have grandchildren. I said, well, Joe, what about wealth? He said, the wealth is in the wives and in the grandchildren. And so when he was letting me know that he's been praying for our son, praying for the wife that he would marry, started 10 years ago. I said, wow, something I'd been remiss. And so I wanted all of you to see them today. I wanted all of you to know all of the accomplishments that we've had. The schools all over the world, the number of people who've been saved, the impact that we've had on Columbia. I don't know whether you know the Promise Keepers come here now. Every major singer, gospel entertainer comes here. And it all started because of that Coliseum event. It all started because Joe and Gladys quietly prayed and continually pray for us, for the city, and whether they pray here or at home. But Joe and Gladys, we're ashamed to embarrass you like this, but we wanted you to know that we love you and we appreciate you. We look forward to you coming to many more prayer breakfasts, but we want you to know it's not expected or demanded. And one day, shortly, it seems, that I'm going to be sitting in the same seat. And I hope the next guy will be able to broadcast this thing so I can watch it from home. But won't you come up and let us just express just a little love. Let's give them a hand. Bernard, help us. Quickly, Bernard.
All the help I can get right now. And I wish just a few of the things that our brother has said about me were true. I think he embellished them quite a bit.
Joe, that makes me a liar.
Well,
He's
it makes
trying
me
to be
appreciate it. Yeah. It makes me appreciate it. Back on November the 15th,
You want me to tell it?
no, I'll tell it. Last year I had what's called a grand mal seizure. Now I don't know if you know anything about a grand mal seizure, but I can tell you, you don't want one. And there are several elements about a grand mal seizure. You lose your memory. You get emotional, that's what you're seeing right now. That you can't hardly talk without tears coming down. And you think, I'm a man. I used to fly fighters. You know, it's embarrassing to see tears running down your eyes. But God has been good, and I'm able to stand here. I try to walk about a quarter a mile to a half mile a day for exercise to try to continue to recover from this. My wife won't let me go without either her or Katrina back here walking beside me to make sure I don't fall, so that or have one of these seizures, because I actually had another one after that one. And I have checked out every hospital between Charleston and Columbia, and even one over in Augusta called the Georgia Regional Medical Center. As a matter of fact, when I had that one on November the 15th, my wife had heard a lot of noise back in our main bathroom, and she came back to see what was wrong. And I was laying on the floor with blood coming out of my mouth. And of course she called 911, and she called my son who was in town, and I ended up in the hospital not knowing I was there. And then this hospital said, we don't have the equipment to analyze what's wrong with you. We're going to send you over to Richland. They called Richland, and Richland said, we don't have any beds available. And so then they called Augusta, and they sent me over to the Georgia Regional Medical Center in Augusta. 4 days later, I woke up from a coma that I'd been in since falling on the floor. And I thought I was dying. And the thing that was worst on my heart was, Lord, don't let me die. It would not be fair to my wife to go home without me. And God answered my prayer.
Amen.
I was afraid to close my eyes because I thought they would never open again. But finally, tiresome, sleep came over me, and I did fall asleep, and my eyes did wake up again. I did come open again, and I began to feel like I was going to live through this. But we asked the doctor how long. It wasn't long ago, as a matter of fact, because I get tired of being like this. And I asked the doctor, how long does it take you to get over this? And they said 6 months to a year. 6 months to a year. Wow. And I have felt the results since November the 15th of that. And that's the reason Gladys walked up here with me. Now let me tell you about praying for a wife. I've got a wonderful wife, as you can see and as you've heard. A lot of what Redfern said was embellished quite a bit. But what he said about my wife is very true. It's very true. And a long time ago, before my first child was born, I began to think, what is the most important thing for you in life as far as the daily living? And what do you want for your children? And I said, if they can just have a wife like mine, a good wife, and one that loves Jesus, that would be one of the most, and I began to pray that, Lord, and this is not embellishment, this is true. When I found out she was pregnant with that first son, I began to pray for his mate. And let me tell you, I've got 3 boys. And I am honored that all 3 of them love Jesus, and they're helping my sons. God has honored those. And you know, I say the same prayer every day to God. Lord, please provide a good mate for my son that will love Jesus and will be a help to him. And God has honored that request so far. And then the oldest one started to have, his wife got pregnant with a baby. And I said, well, I'm going to pass it on. That worked. I'm going to start passing it on with my grandchildren. And so while they were pregnant, I started praying for the mate of my first grandchild. And now I've got a great grandchild even. I've got 9
Looks like
grandchildren,
him.
9 grandchildren and 1 great grandchild. And I'm telling you that every day I not only pray for the mates of those grandchildren that are not married yet, but I pray for that beautiful little great grandchild that God would provide a mate for him for her as well. And I'm going to trust God that He will do that, provide a mate that will love God and will love Him, and together they will be able to impact on their community and their world for Jesus. Now, when I came in here, one of the other things, Gladys is saying, hurry up and sit down. One of the things when I came in here, a young man came over and shook my hand, and I said, what is your name? And he says, Lucky. I said, Lucky. Hey, good to meet you, Lucky. Now then later it kind of came to me. There's a guy in my church named Lucky Diddy. And I went over and I said, is your last name Diddy? He says, yeah. And then I told him a little bit about why I was having memory problems. He said, at least you put my last name with it and you pulled them together. Lucky Diddy. Now Lucky Diddy, if I remember correctly, and it's not my remembrance because my wife told me, that Lucky Diddy came into the CityLight. And he came to the CityLight, and my wife, being as aggressive as she is, when she met him, she said, let me tell you about my church. And I think it was 4 or 5 years ago that Lucky Diddy came into our church and has been a member ever since and has been there. But not only did he come there, but he saw a beautiful young lady that was there. And they got married together. And I don't know, if I'm going to be honest with you, I wasn't praying for Lucky's mate. I wasn't, but somehow it flowed over. And he got a mate that's the same. And now he's got 2 children. And he and his mate are raising them to know who Jesus is, so that as they get older, they can accept them as their own personal Savior. I'm just glad that our speaker today is AA. You know why that is? Because I can remember the first letter of the alphabet. Now, brother, if I come back next time I see you, I say, Brother ZZ, I've gone to the wrong side of the alphabet. And it's not because I think you're dozing, it's just I'm having trouble with my memory.
Okay, so it's my turn.
All right, go ahead, guys.
I got to show you when I found him in the bathroom this morning. You talk about prayer. When he's on the floor having a seizure. I said, not today, Jesus! This isn't the time and this isn't the way! Tell him now. Call 911. And I'm praying over the phone with the 911 lady. I said, look, we got Jesus, but send the ambulance. And I said, Lord, if you want my husband, you're going to have to do it and not let me know. Because you know I'm going to pray him back.
I've given her a lot of opportunities to pray me back.
Yes.
And I wanted to be a pilot and a fighter pilot back during the Vietnam War.
I want you to talk a little
And
bit.
so finally
Okay, honey.
No, let Joe finish.
One more story, because these people have jobs to go to.
Okay.
Okay.
And I wanted to be a fighter pilot. And as a fighter pilot, you want to be a fighter pilot. You want to be in the fight. You want to be there. And so when I heard that the F-105s were flying the hottest missions over Vietnam, up over Hanoi in North Vietnam, I said, I need to see if I can go there. And so I volunteered, and sure enough, they accepted my volunteer statement, and I went to F-105s. And I came out of Hanoi in that F-105 one day after flying a mission. I guess I was not more than 3,000 feet above John McCain, because he was in a POW camp down there. 5 of us had gone from Misawa, Japan, and gone to F-105s. 3 of those got shot down The other two of us were lucky enough not to. Our God was with us. And one of them stayed 6.5 years in a POW camp. One died, and then one was rescued out of the trees. Literally, his parachute got hung up in the trees, and he was in the southern part of North Vietnam where these big helicopters called Jolly Green Giants could come in and rescue him. And they came in, but he was up in the trees. So they had to tell him, hey, you got to drop so we can get you. And so he released his two quick disconnects on his parachute, fell 10 feet on 2 broken legs, so they could get him and rescue him out of there. But I was coming out from away from right down Hanoi. The Duma Bridge was our target that day. And we were coming back from Hanoi. And we'd always brief, if you had any weapons left you didn't use, then here are certain target areas to release these. They may not even be occupied, but let's use these weapons that we got left on those targets. And I had a wingman beside me, and I was leading the element. And I went in on that target, and as I pulled off, now we're going somewhere close to 500 miles an hour. And as I pulled off that target, I could see the flak all out in front of me there. Usually it was back behind you, you'd see it back here chasing you. But that day, it was coming off in front of me. And I think it's because they had never seen an F-105 go that slow. And so anyway, I began to jink as much as I could without stalling out the airplane. And I reached down and tried to go in afterburner, and it wouldn't light. And I kept saying, light afterburner, light. And it wouldn't light. And finally I realized, well, it won't light because I forgot to turn on the bomb bay tank. And so it ran out of fuel while there was still a bomb bay tank full of fuel down there. And I turned it on and hit the air start switch, and slowly it came to life, but it wouldn't, the afterburner wouldn't light to give me more speed. And I realized from my training finally came through that, well, it's got to have a lot of fuel going into there, because I was just pouring fuel into the tailpipe. She's still touching me on the back here, so I got to go. And finally I realized that, so I pulled the throttle inboard and said, I'm just going to have to accept it in what they call full military power, so the engine will keep running and I can get out of there. Well, God allowed me to get out and come home, and to come home to my family that I love so dearly. Then, okay. Then another time I decided I wanted to build my own airplane. And I built my own airplane, but usually my problems are my own fault, you know, something I did and created my own. And I was flying out of, it would land on water so we could keep it there at our house. And I took off from my home, and I think I was heading to Atlanta. And I got over Saluda County, and all of a sudden it got awful quiet as the engine quit. You know, and I said, oh, there's a pasture over there, a couple of pastures, and there's look like a hedgerow between the two, and this one on the other side is a longer pasture. If I can get to that one, maybe I can land in that pasture. And this one's a shorter one, a smaller pasture, and I can see black dots, and there's obviously cows in that one, so I'll go for the second one. But the plane kept getting lower and lower, and the trees kept getting bigger and bigger. And finally I said, I'm not going to make that second one. I'm going to go in the first one. Cows or no cows, they better get out of the way. And so I started turning toward that one, and the trees kept getting bigger. And finally I said, well, I'm not even going to make that one. I'm going to have to land in the trees out here. And you know, it went down, and finally I know that when an airplane gets too slow, it stalls out. And when it stalls out, the nose goes straight down, and you go straight into the ground. So I was about to go into the trees, but I had to let that airplane keep enough speed to keep it flying. And gradually, I actually landed like you would land on a runway, but it was on the top of trees. And then it went through the trees. And I pinched myself after it stopped, said, yeah, still hurts. Still hurts. And so then I thought, I better get out of here. This thing might catch on fire. And so I got the canopy open and got out of there. And I I knew that pasture was up there, so I walked toward that pasture, and I got to the edge. There was a road going around it, and I could see a farmhouse down the road. And so I thought, well, I'll walk down there and get some help. And as I started walking down there, a vehicle, I believe a vehicle came up, and then they came out with the sheriff came out, and they went back, and the sheriff had a helicopter. They sent for it, and it came out, and it flew overhead. As it flew overhead, they took pictures of it. And when I saw the pictures, I saw what almost looked like a road through the trees. It was a clearing through the trees. Well, you see, when they had cleared those trees out of there, if you know about that, anything about that, cutting down trees and clearing the area, they'll rake all the debris up into an area and make a row out of it and use that for games and stuff that can be raised in there. And Gladys said, look what your airplane did when you made that. I said, I didn't do that. I didn't make that. So mine is back behind me here. That's in front of me. And I realized, without seeing it in the air, because once I realized I was landing in the woods, I put my head down because I thought, put my head down, and so I'd have something that it would go into the panel there and stop me. And when I looked at it, I realized it was on this row. I had come down with the wings hitting either side, but the fuselage was going straight down that row that I did not even know it was there. And so I landed there safely.
Amen.
And I'm sure there was a wife still back there praying. Well, that was easy. I'm sorry. I'm going to have to let her take over.
Whoa! Oh my goodness!
I got some more stories, but
if y'all want, I would love for you to come visit him at his house if you want to hear his story. You just let us know. What a day! CityLight was not something Joe and I did. It is something God did for the city, and He just used us as instruments. If my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear from heaven and forgive their sin and heal their land. You notice what intrigues me about that verse. He talks about wicked ways, but he talks about one sin. Mm-hmm. And that's because the wicked ways, the acts that we have that are evil, is not the sin. Those are wicked ways. The sin is that rebellion against God. Yeah. I will not bow my knee and be responsive to the God in heaven and the Jesus on the cross. So CityLight is an organization that believes in that scripture, and we believe in prayer, and we know God can do anything. Yeah. He can even save a man in a plane crash. I mean, that's nothing. God can do anything. For some time now, though, Brother Redfern and Luella, did she have to leave? Oh, I'm sorry, Luella, have been the feet, the arms, the heart, the legs, the head of CityLight. We have been the prayer partners. And what I've seen God do in the last 20 years has been so awesome, just to hear those reports. It will change our world. Brother Diggs, I wish I had heard you sooner. I would like to hear more of you. That was awesome. As good as Tony Evans. Now, don't say it a lot. Wonderful message on prayer. And believe every word of it. And we want, we just, what our nation needs is to pray. Turn from wicked ways and don't rebel against God. And I'm believing that He can and will do that if His people pray. Amen. We would like if you don't have a CityLight prayer group, can they have one?
Yes.
Well, then why don't you tell us about that?
Well, before he does, Before he does, I want to just tell you one little thing. You know that walk I take, a half mile or so? It takes me about a half hour to do that. And every day when I do that, I go to my cell phone and I punch it into one of Tony Evans' messages, lasts about a half hour.
Wow.
And I still do that. This one today is called Begging for a Blessing. And if we were to leave it there for a little bit, don't know if we'd have time to do that without my wife punching me out back here. But if you want to get your, I don't know about these other cell phones, but if you got an iPhone, if you go to the App Store and put in Tony Evans, there's a free app that'll come up there and into your phone. And you can have a wonderful half-hour message from him every day. So if you got an iPhone here right now, I would encourage you to take it out and go to the App Store and click on Tony Evans. And you'll hear a great message every day.
Amen.
There are many. As I'm looking around this room, I don't want to exclude the others who are legs, feet, and arms at CityLight. So many of you are. They're not the only ones. We're not the only ones. But together as a body, we can make a difference.
Amen. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Ladies, thank you.
Amen.
Brothers and sisters, it is time that we leave this place, and I'm not going to have any comments. I just want to tell one story. Joe spoke at a CityLight breakfast one time before, and he was up there for maybe 45 minutes and then an hour, and I was standing in the back giving him signals.
Sorry, you gotta listen to Tony whether you like it.
You know, once Tony gets started. But I was giving him signals, and he kept going. Went on another half hour. So he said, Redfern, was I really doing that good? I said, yes, sir. We're going to ask Reverend A. Dix to come and give us our closing prayer and benediction.
Amen.
Won't you stand, please?
God, as we approach and face the day ahead of us, we've come to face you first. We would that you allow your radiance to radiate from us. Remind us of our purposes. Remind us of your presence. Encourage us with your power,
Yes, Lord.
that we may treat people with respect.
Yes.
Let us not close this day without having accomplished what you sent us this day
Yes.
to accomplish.
Yes.
Now unto him who is able to
Yes.
keep you from falling. Now unto him who is able to present you faultless before his glory with exceeding great joy. Now unto God be glory, majesty, dominion, and power, henceforth, now, and forevermore. Amen.
Amen. Amen.